through a common friend. We've been working with each other for the last 4 months now, and he's working on a pretty interesting startup. And I'll let him talk about what he's been working on. They're kind of reinventing the investing world for people like you and me, right? So anybody could be a startup investor. That's the aim of what. So we'll talk about. I'll let Vittal talk about it. So glad to have him on this edition of the LinkedIn Live. So Vittal, welcome. Thanks for taking the time out. And so usually this series we try to unravel how different companies of different sizes and in different industry segments have embraced remote. How what have they overcome as challenges, and what could generally any remote startup or any startup that wants to embrace remote, what could we learn from your journey? So that's kind of what we try to cover, right? And today we're going to take through the story and journey of Vittal's pod. So Vittal, thank you. Quick, if you could start off with a quick intro of you and also your startup, that will get set the context for the rest of the talk.
Thanks a lot, Shyam, for the welcome. Also, very interesting that we are doing this. But before we deep dive into the actual topic of remote working, right? So, I have been, working remotely for various clients from the last decade or so. I would say,
Right,
right from when I was working with KPMG, and later on with Robert Bosch. My work location was always the project location. It never actually mattered if I work from office or not. So I would say this was imbibed in my working style right from the last 10, 13 years, if I may
right,
right. So it all started for me that way. I think if you look at it, how it all started, the funda has been very simple: get the work done, right? So it does not matter where you are, who you are, in what position you are in. You need to focus on getting work done, as simple as
right,
that.
right.
Irrespective of what role you are, the designations are for the external worlds and for the decisions what you make internally.
Mm-hmm.
Except that, I think you really have to work on getting things delivered.
Right.
So, having said that, have done my share of business consulting with KPMG, Robert Bosch, uh, across the globe. Traveled to good 30 plus countries. Built network there. I incidentally had my first startup. I would say accidentally had my first startup in 2008.
Okay.
Back then, that was the year of recession, where
Mm-hmm.
all our corporate offers were revoked by the large giants of Infosys and Wipros. So we were, forced to actually start something on our own to survive in the world. So that's how I started my first company, which later I sold it to a fashion vertical giant, currently part of Aditya Birla Group, after
Okay.
1.5 year stint. So that still marks my first exit, I would say. Uh, I was in Germany for a good 9.5 years, you know,
Mm-hmm.
working in a small town out of Germany since I was traveling across the globe. So I thought, let me imbibe into the culture of the German land, right? So Deutschland, what we say, and started working out from there. Again, was not defined to be in one place, so chose the best location where I would also set up my life for the next decade or so. It
Sure.
all started there. 2016, I had another startup in Germany, a full-fledged one,
Mm-hmm.
which we raised. You know, we raised the company from scratches. It was a crowdsourcing platform called CrowdPouch, which eventually
Okay.
got acquired in 2019. So
Mm-hmm.
that is my full-fledged exit in 2019, which
Okay.
happened. Uh, Post that, I think everybody knows what happened in 2020, right?
Right. Right.
Uh, I would say the marking of remote working. Before 2020, I still remember a lot of my friends would say, I cannot come out of office because I've not yet finished my 9 hours in
Right.
office,
Right.
right? So I think the whole world shifted to a different paradigm, if you see.
Right.
Uh, Very interestingly, now people are leaving because they have been called back to the office.
Very true.
So
Yeah.
it's an entire 360 turn what we have seen in the span of 3 years. So I think this has been my journey, and have been investing in startups from quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
Me, along with my current co-founder, we have done co-investments. You know, we understood there are certain gaps in the way how angel investing is happening,
Mm-hmm.
and the opportunity majorly in
Right.
streamlining the current fundraising process. As a
Right.
founder as well, because I'm a founder, you are a founder, you understand how much of work is needed to run a business,
Mm-hmm.
out of which if you have to clone yourself for fundraising, it would have been nice. That's not possible
Yeah.
usually, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So, since you have to wear many hats, I think we wanted to simplify the burden which a founder already goes through. And we started off a pod as a concept early last year, where uh, the fundamental goal is the typical timeline to raise any round of funding, early stage funding for a startup is 3 to 6 months
Mm-hmm.
in a in a funding summer, not winter, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So in a funding summer, so 3 to 6 months, we wanted to bring that down to 3 to 6 weeks, which we eventually have done that on the
Awesome.
platform. The
Right.
process entirely is, I would say, semi-automated, entirely digital,
Mm-hmm.
paperless. So all of those things put together, we have so far closed close to 30 deals on the platform,
Right.
facilitated to becoming a marketplace, you know, one of the top in India as well. So it is going all up north. So from where we are, we wanted to start off uh, a team which understands what is deliverables,
Mm-hmm.
very important aspect. And once you understand what is deliverability, it does not matter from where you sit and deliver.
Right.
Even now
Right.
I'm sitting at my uh, house, and so are all my team members,
Mm-hmm.
so, and we don't ask from where are you working. It does not really matter.
Right.
What brings us together is the common vision of
Mm-hmm.
essentially solving a simple problem, I would say, which is unorganized access to early stage investments and early stage fundraising for startup.
Right.
So this has been the journey so far. More, I would love to, explain of how we are doing this, managing and all, based on your question as well.
Sure, sure. No, no, that's a great introduction. I mean, and kind of clearly you've been a believer and a practitioner of remote before probably even this word was coined, right? 1985 is probably the first formal experiment of remote, or like some kind of scheduled kind of time away from office was started, right? So I think you've been right there in kind of, embracing that for yourself, right? So when Pod started, so was that a de facto choice for you and your co-founder to say like you're going to be a remote first from day one, or it? I mean, did you think did it automatically or naturally come as a part and parcel of what kind of company you were trying to set out to create, or it came as a consequence to other decisions that you were making along the way?
So, Pod till date does not have its own dedicated space.
Right,
You know. So, I had another startup called Create, which is still in operations, close to profitability. So that had its own office space because it's a operation heavy work.
right,
So when Pod started as a concept, we were pretty sure that we need to discuss things in the boardroom or the
mm-hmm,
whiteboard, where you actually sit down and discuss the concepts. So
right,
that is how we started off from scratch, right?
mm-hmm,
But you always need to meet the person whom you are working with. Only
mm-hmm,
then the chemistry is also there.
right,
So this brought up a whole aspect where we started off in the office space, but not our own office space. It was the other startup office space which we were working.
mm-hmm,
Uh, we then understood that there's a lot of commute time which is also happening, and we are
right,
based out of Bangalore. Okay, so factor one is the traffic, where you spend. It's not just the time; it is the amount of stress one goes through the
right,
traffic, right?
right,
So the quality of travel is itself very demoralizing for anybody
mm-hmm,
who's so.
yeah,
That was one of the aspect. The second thing was the nature of the company is also where we build relationships with various stakeholders. That means we are also on road pretty often.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So that also demanded us not to be in one place. We
right,
had to go
right,
look out for business. And
Right.
it's all, startups are all about selling propositions.
Right.
You go knock on doors, keep selling. You cannot do that sitting in one place.
Awesome.
So
Yeah.
this was one of the key things which we started off understanding, but we
Hmm.
never had a space in mind,
Right.
you know. So until I think recently when we got in touch with GoFloaters as well,
Hmm.
we thought, why don't we start working out once a week from a common place so that we
Right.
all get to know the expanding team, who we are, who they are,
Right.
understand, and that could in turn boost the morale of the team and at the same time productivity of the company as well.
Right. Right.
So this is how it all started for us. Conscious choice to keep it remote from, I would say, inception.
Inception. Right. Yeah, absolutely right. So I think like I think what you said is like in a way choosing to be remote has also in a way helped in that in the aspect of being out there with your stakeholders, right? Meeting stakeholders. So it's kind of been more or less rather than a compromise or it is by design you had to do that so that you could spend more time meeting
Yeah,
stakeholders rather than being inside of the four walls of a building and being in your own world, right? So I think that way I think it's tied to your business in that sense, right? In a way, and
yeah,
you contrasted quite nicely that your other startup, which is operations heavy, right? You decided not to be remote first there, right? So where you need hands-on tech, right? You need people to uh, work through the product, right? Ship the product, right? So you had to have people who maintain quality control of the product. So you
yeah,
had to have a physical presence, right? Whereas here it's more knowledge work, it's more relationship building work, right? It's
mm,
product. You're building your platform, your product. So you decide. So that's the choice that it's brilliantly brought across. Same founder, two different problems, and you're approaching it two differently, right? In two different ways.
yeah,
So that's the clear. I can see the clarity of thought here that some companies lack there, right? So they still cat on the wall on whether it's a return to office or remote work, right? Are we losing too much of control? So I'll come to this, right? So I'm going to kind of digress from the way I wanted to kind of take this conversation, right? Um, so and this is sparked by what you just said, right? So a lot of companies that we continue to talk to, a lot of companies that are like were forced to be remote because of COVID, right? And now after the entire COVID thing has gone past, is at least I would say past us for now, is that they are now cat on the wall, like I said, on hey, do I go return to office, right? Or do I come to like do I stay remote? Do I commit to remote and all that, right? And the confusion is one, they think that they lose control, right? If it's remote, they feel that productivity could take a hit if they are remote. They feel that they could not be innovative or cannot be creative if they stay remote. So these are the like apprehensions they have, right? So maybe we'll take one by one, right? So the first thing, loss of control. Do you and your co-founder do you feel that when your team is remote? I know recently you've started to also do once in a week be physically in a co-working space. But if you rewind before that, right? Did you feel that you don't have control over the organization and how it's growing? Uh, I mean, instilling the responsibilities to the people. Did you feel that you had a loss of control there, and did you have to do anything to kind of set things in motion, or was it, or how did you approach it? Right. So maybe that may be a better way to ask the question.
see, it all depends on how you structure the company as well, right? So when you look at sales as one of the aspect, you don't need that person to be in the office. I think you start questioning what are you doing in the office, correct?
Right.
So that is one of the role. When you look at a person who's building technology, right? Usually the developers, they say, hey, you know what? I am an experienced person. I'm going to sit and deliver wherever I can. you know for him to come sit in the office and make him clock in a particular number of hours is
Mm-hmm.
counterproductive, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that essentially was one of the key aspects when we were looking at it. And I
Right.
myself am not in the office
Yeah. Yeah.
99% of the time, right? So but you need to get the work done, like I initially pointed out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when you're defining a role, I think even when we are looking at hiring new people, which we are currently also doing,
Mm-hmm.
the first thing what we put out them is here are the 3 4 points which you will have to deliver. This is the
Right.
first conversation, whether it's the HR, whether it's me, or anybody who is the reporting head of that particular function, right? These are the things which you will have to deliver. To do these things, you need these resources, and to achieve these things, you will have to put in these efforts.
Mm-hmm.
Nowhere in the equation we actually tell them that you need to come sit and do this only from here, right?
Right.
Now that is a point, according to me, where we are not focusing on the productivity of the role or the outcome. We are only focusing on how this should be processed.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. So if the process is going to enhance productivity, it's fine. But you cannot start a process and then focus on productivity. You focus on
Good.
productivity and then build out the process, is
Right.
how we
Right.
have always stepped into. My
Got it.
current co-founder, he is also currently in UK. We
Okay.
haven't met also from quite some time now. He is also traveling. I am also traveling. We catch up on multiple calls.
Mm-hmm.
Same goes with my marketing team. Same with my investor relations. Whenever there's a team, whenever there's a time and opportunity, say, hey, let's go meet somewhere. Usually it's third wave coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So to go catch up with people.
Yeah, it's
It
the
also
mecca. Yeah.
feels nice to go meet, in person. That also is
Right.
nice.
Right.
So I think it is a very important blend which is needed to a company. But again, it totally depends on how the company has to perform. At this scale, maybe yes. Maybe we are talking next year, it could have changed. We don't know.
Right.
It
Right.
all focuses on the deliverables. That is
Deliverables.
something
Yeah.
which I would like to focus on. Yeah.
Yeah. So being outcome oriented. So, but that leads me to the next question, right? And
Yeah.
you've from the time that we spoke first to now, my guess is that you've almost doubled your team size at Pod, right? So you're growing very
Okay.
very fast, right? So and again, then coming to the hiring aspect, you said you are actively hiring as well, right? So how do you identify? See again. You're sending the clear message that hey, I am only worried about what you deliver, right? I don't care about when you work. Are you a night owl? Are you a day person, right? Do you take 5 breaks, or you kind of sit in one marathon session and do it? I don't care, right? You're delivering stuff, and this is your ownership. This is the piece that you own fully, and these are the resources that you need to put into uh, move things to make it happen. Right? So you're kind of defining, setting that outcome oriented culture there, right? But when you're hiring people for Pod, how are you seeing, or what are the telltale signs, maybe if I have to ask you that way, or what kind of mechanism through which you find out whether somebody who's a potential candidate, potential employee, do they fit in into Pod or not? Do they get it? Do they don't get it? Right? So are they going to be able to work in this fashion, right? Or do they need a lot of micromanagement to kind of get them moving, right? So how do you what's your criteria? How do you go about doing that?
See, I think we have all lived long enough to understand that until a person comes and tries their hand, we won't know if it's going to happen or not.
Okay.
When you are hiring, also, there are certain things which define on credentials and experience, and a certain percentage on how they sell themselves into the role. And finally, it all comes down to your intuition, if they will perform well or not, right?
Right.
And then the actual story might be something else too. Correct.
Right.
So I think when we are hiring, particularly, we make them very clear of the role. You know, we ask them, "Is this what you understand? Is this something what you can relate to?" And
Mm-hmm.
once the skill sets are mentioned, we tell them that this is a hybrid model. We meet once a week. You know, and that is also something which we have not defined. Some
Mm-hmm.
weeks we don't meet at all. You
Right.
know, especially when I think that Raksha Bandhan was there. Many people would travel outside.
Right. Right.
So we understand those aspects. We
Mm-hmm.
don't compel people to come only on that particular day
Mm-hmm.
when majority of them are also not there. But then you also have another set of people who say, hey, you know what? We also want to meet few other people very often.
Right.
So there are makeshift arrangements which keeps happening. But when we are hiring, we clearly tell them the roles and responsibilities. We tell
Mm-hmm.
them this is the work structure what we follow. Over a period of time, they need some hand holding for sure, because some
Right.
of them are used to remote working, some of
Right.
them are not.
Right.
especially somebody who's fresh out of college. They don't
Mm-hmm.
understand this. They
Right.
think they also have some leisure time, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So there is definitely, I would say, a judgment call which they cannot make immediately. Somebody who's joined out of college, but
Mm-hmm.
this is where we tell them to reach out to somebody who's already experienced in the company. Reach
Right.
out if you understand that you have a lot of time which you believe are not being able to make it productive. Reach out to us. We'll also try to understand where we can actually fit. We have had some instances where we have given full control. After a month, we have understood that it is not working at all. And we inform them this is
Mm-hmm.
absolutely not working for you, for us. I think there are better opportunities which suits you better. So
Mm-hmm.
it happens both ways. Hiring is a very underrated problem for every founder.
Mm-hmm.
I think many founders would also resonate to that. But
Right.
until they come, try, even they would not know if it's a fit for them or not. Forget us, they also will
Sure.
not know if it's a fit or not.
Sure. Sure.
That
Yeah,
challenge
I think,
continues to be there. Yeah.
yeah, as time progresses, I think, like you said, right, more people are familiar with uh, how to operate in a remote
Yeah.
team, right? So things may get a little easier, right? But I think what
Yeah.
you said is clear, right? So you first have to understand whether they understand the role, they understand the responsibility, the ownership that they have been assigned to, and do they get
Mhm.
what is expected from them in that role, and how they need to deliver, right? I think,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, like you said, it's an intuition call that you end up taking, right? So moving on, right? So you've scaled, and we spoke. You spoke about once in a week, meeting in person is helping, and all that, right? So before we get into that aspect of it, right? If we take a day in the life of Vittal, right, or day in the life of maybe not just Vittal, right? Maybe somebody who's just joined the company, right? Uh, and how does it work for them, right? How do they what starts the day off, right? How does somebody know that, hey, this is what I need to work on today, right? How does somebody know, for example, you said, hey, I'm stuck somewhere, right? Who do I need to reach out to kind of like move the like remove the
Mm.
friction from the process, or remove the friction from the uh, clarity. And so I wanted to kind of elaborate on how you do like what kind of documentation slash what kind of work allocation slash uh, uh, I mean project responsibility allocation. I would, rather than saying task or work, I would say responsibility, right? Which is, unless your tech team is working on a particular release, right? How
Mm.
does a developer know that, hey, this is my module, right? Or this is what I'm owning to deliver it today, right? And these are the people I have to work with to get this done, right? These are dependencies that I have, right? So how do they communicate intra-team, inter-team? How does the day progress for them, right? So if you can, and again, in this remote setup, right, we'll come to that one day in the week later, right? But assuming, let's
Yeah.
say, everybody's at their home or different in third world coffee or some anywhere else in the world, right? Your co-founder is in the UK, right? So how does a day happen at Pod?
See, typically, each function has its own person who's leading the function, right?
Right.
So they have their own set of methodologies. We all communicate through remote tools like Slack, Trello, and all of these things are already built in into the person's onboarding itself. So they
Right.
are onboarded on Trello. We don't have onboarded on Slack, so
Mm-hmm.
there's no physical meet and greet kind of a situation. So I think it also depends on how other people respond. If somebody is welcoming, you see these
Right.
10-20 messages welcoming them. That is
Mm-hmm.
also something which is nice, right? For
Right.
somebody who's joining you. So I think for a typical day as an employee with what you start off first by everybody says good morning on Slack. You know,
Okay.
we jokingly also say to each other that, oh, that means this person has started working from that moment on. Right?
Yeah. So it's checked in.
So self checked in. So that
Yeah.
is something which we tell, and there are certain teams which also do morning stand-ups. That is something which we do. We have some wrap-ups as well. In the end of the day, typically goes also on through late nights. If there is something which we immediately need to catch up, that happens ad hoc. End of the day
Mm-hmm.
goes
Mm-hmm.
on in midnights as well. Right? So all of those things happen. Communication happens everything through Slack,
Mm-hmm.
and task management happens through Trello. Now we have kept it simple for now. There are certain automations where it gets triggered, automated workflows happen for a certain set of people. So all of those things are already predefined. Very simple set. You know, this happens, and if there are any meetings, so this is just like how we are doing now. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so we do virtual calls. Google Meet is the best friend for us
Mm-hmm.
every day. So Google
Mm-hmm.
Meet, Slack, Trello, every day usage.
Right.
So
Right.
that is how we communicate with each other. We, and I think depending on whenever the HR schedules, there are some small interesting trivia games which she runs on Slack as well,
Right.
where everybody participate if they're not having another meeting, but majority of them try to participate at that particular point in
Right.
time. We also have a small reward system, but I would say this is like a reverse reward, where the person who wins those games treats rest of the people. So
Okay.
we do all those things. Yeah. So
Right.
it's an interesting bunch of people.
Right. Right. So, and at the setup, and again, I can, I'm probably taking my situation and kind of trying to project it towards you, Vittal here, right? So, i- at the size that we are both in, right? A lot of things may not be documented. For example, I don't know, right? Maybe I'll ask this, right? I don't know if there's a culture document or a remote work policy document that Pod has, right?
Mhm.
I certainly don't have for
Mhm.
GoFloaters, right? So we're not like putting everything down on black and white, right? But a lot of these things people get to learn by seeing others practice in the company, right? So as the founder, right? I think one of the responsibilities that you shoulder is to set the right example for your team, right? Again, you obviously it's like you obviously want to do that, right? It's like it's an intent is there, right? But sometimes we don't visibly do that people are able to catch that. Hey, this
Mhm.
is what this is how. So, just want to kind of throw this question to you: Are you do you do certain things consciously, right? To for example, right? I have started to consciously announce my team that I'm not going to be available from this time to this time on my laptop, right?
Yep.
And even tell the reason, right? Hey, I have to take my son to the park, or I have some personal work. I'm stepping out, right? So, and it could be in the middle of the day, right? You're not People are
Mhm.
generally not expecting that I'm away, but I am away, right? Because that's the choice that I've taken for my own
Yeah.
planning of my time, right? So I started. I was not doing that before, right? I would tell maybe just the leads and say, hey, I'm off, right? Don't expect me to meet this one. But now I broadcast it to the entire team. So that's a conscious
Mhm.
choice that I've started to make, right? And obviously, uh, at some point in time, others start catching up that, right? And say,
Mhm.
hey, so anyway, coming back to Vittal, right? So coming back to Pod, are you trying to consciously uh, set examples because the documentation might not say that in as many words, or onboarding might not say that in as many words, right? Are you consciously trying to set an example as to how uh, different aspects of how the transparency should be there, or how the accountability should be there? If I'm not able to deliver something on time, uh, how should people take that accountability? Are you trying to set examples in different aspects of how you would ideally like to your team to also behave?
Yeah. See, I'll tell you, there are pros and cons on this. One, since you're remote, communication becomes your very most important thing, right?
Right.
Because you don't see each other often. You don't know where the other person is. So I think consciously, including me and all the team members, if they're not available, even for a half a day or for the rest of the day,
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason, they put it out to everybody broadcasting, telling that, guys, I'm not available. If anything is urgent, call
Right.
me directly. Right.
Right.
So I think that communication has helped the entire team understand if they are if they can reach out to them at this point in time or maybe later.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why communication is something which is very important. It can be
Mm-hmm.
as trivial as hi, right? Some people say hi. When you
Mm-hmm.
don't hear back, they assume that the other person is busy.
He's
Okay,
away. Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
right? So I think those things need to be explained a little better for
Mm-hmm.
people.
Right.
It can also be, hi, this is what I'm looking for. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you just see a hi and you're like, okay, what do I do? Should I just respond for a hi,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
what is the context of this hi?
Right, right.
So I think it starts from there, which is why communicating clearly in messaging, I'm sure everybody messages these days, and it
Right.
does not matter which channel it is. So you just have to translate that into the tools which are available and then take it ahead. And once you are clear with whatever it is, the result is always going to be much effective. Just like
Mm-hmm.
how AI is happening, right? The clearer information you give, the output is more clearer. It
Yeah,
cannot be vague.
correct. No, no, yeah, it's a very valid point, right? So, and coming to the aspect of how Pod started to work with GoFloaters, right? So, what made you or the team think that you need to have some kind of a cadence of trying to meet as the entire team once a week, right? What brought about that? What kind of challenges you were, or what kind of issues slash challenges, or any teething troubles that you were actually seeing that made you think that you need to set some kind of a rhythm of meeting once in a week and make that more or less a practice, right? So what led to that decision?
Yeah. So I think two aspects. One, we are a mix of experienced plus people out of college. So we need to set examples to them in understanding how actually working styles are defined in a company, because they have
Right,
no clue. You
right,
know, they think startups are pretty cool, which it is in terms of bringing in your ideas,
right,
not the other aspects, right?
right.
So you actually need to think on those lines. This is where we do a little hand holding for those people.
Hmm. Okay.
The second thing is, uh, why is also because as a startup there are a lot of challenges which you keep facing,
Hmm.
and some are better communicated in person with a meeting room of four people sitting together focusing on the solution, rather
Hmm.
than trying to solve it entirely remotely, where
Right.
people would potentially or could potentially get distracted too. So remote work is not entirely focused also. I would say that is also a challenge for many
Hmm.
people. So
Right,
I have kids at home, I have dogs at home. Now focus is on multiple aspects,
right.
but when you are in one zone, I think you need to focus on that particular aspect, which is why we understood that it is now time to meet weekly once. And that is how we started finding out certain options in the co-working spaces. Most of them were offering monthly subscriptions, which we didn't
Hmm.
want. We
Hmm.
wanted something which was flexible, where we could choose and pick which day we meet, where do we meet. So
Hmm.
this is where we found GoFloaters. I think one of the mutual connect also mentioned, right? He
Right.
mentioned
Yeah.
that, look, what you're looking for is exactly what this guy is doing.
Hmm.
So I think it was a perfect fit for us. The team reached out, and I think from then on, there's no looking back. We
Right.
have been booking. I think we are also meeting tomorrow, if I'm not wrong. So we are all meeting tomorrow, and yeah, it keeps varying every week.
Right. And what
Yeah.
kind of, so you spoke about like new people on for them to understand what it takes to be a team member, right? I mean, and setting the right expectations, showing examples to them. So and by now that you've done this over like maybe I don't know, lost count, but at least 6 7 times that you've done this through GoFloaters, if not more, right? Sorry, I think it's at least 8 10 times that I think you've done 10 weeks you've done so far, right? So what kind of benefits or what kind of advantage? So not I wouldn't say advantage. What kind of changes do you see happening uh, when you have this, right? So do you I so again I'll come to
Mhm.
sharing with you some examples of what some of my other clients kind of share. But from your perspective, how has this changed the nature of work and the nature on how people kind of get gel well with each other and work, right? So has that and what kind of a tangible impact you're seeing?
Yep. So what has happened is, it's a contradiction of what we wanted, in fact, because
Okay,
now people want to meet more often.
okay,
So they find the chemistry between each other very nice,
right,
although none of these people knew each other from you know before
before,
work or something like that.
right,
So I think they now want to meet, greet new people. They want to be with each other for a longer duration. So
Mm-hmm.
that is still happening. Some of them still, I think, use GoFloaters directly
Correct.
from the team. Three of them go sit in the office. They
Right.
work it out, and they have some meetings scheduled. So I think it has become the go-to option for us to start looking at how often we meet, more than what we had already planned. But we still want to focus on once a week,
Right.
as we go ahead. And anything ad hoc comes up, the team takes it up and they meet whenever they want
Right.
directly. So I think the bonding is something which is nice. It's not too much, it is also
Mm-hmm.
not too little. I think that
Right.
fine balance is something which is very important in any
Mm.
organization, of course.
True. True.
uh, we would not strike the perfect balance, but always inching towards that. I think that
Yeah.
would be the journey what we'll be looking
Yeah, it's a perpetual motion towards that equilibrium point, right? You keep
at. Yeah,
keep and it's you keep
true.
figuring it out, right, as to where that
Yeah.
equilibrium point lies, right? So I think we're towards the end of this one, Vittal, right? I want to kind of throw you a rapid fire set of questions, right? And primarily these are the points that the naysayers for remote put across. And again, I'm not trying to preach that remote or remote first is for every company. Like you said, your own other startup, you're that
Yeah.
way, right? So it's not about that, right? But for the startups that could be remote, they are deciding consciously deciding not to be for certain reasons, right? And I'll put those reasons across. And I just want you to answer this rapid fire from Pod's perspective, right? So it doesn't have to be a generic uh, answer, right? So remote work productivity is drops, right? Productivity is good for the initial part, but then after that drops, right? Have you observed that at Pod? Yes or no?
Maybe.
Okay, sure. And you generally have uh, creativity takes a hit, right? So creativity happens when people are together. They're trying to brainstorm all that. So when you're remote, right? Again, I know you're doing this once a week and all that, but in general, right? So have you seen the creativity quotient? Again, you're in a space where you are solving your solution doesn't nothing like what exists today, right? You're creating something that could be the new standard of how people invest, right? So in that sense, right, you need a lot of creativity and a lot of creative ideas to be could to be discussed and brainstormed. So do you see that remote is in a way limiting that creativity?
No, definitely.
Okay. So third is that uh, people say like if you can't be async, right? You can't even async communication. You can't be remote, right? As in a lot of if you see a lot of the remote work evangelists and top thinkers of remote, they in a way oversell async communication a lot, right? But I know for a fact that maybe 50% of the communication is async, 50% is sync, right? Hey, let's jump on a call. Let's do a Google Meet right now and solve
Yeah.
this now, right? So uh, rather than like doing playing the badminton game, hey, I throw it, you throw
Mm.
it back to me, right? So we kind of, hey, let's get this done, right? So to
Yeah.
move things quickly, right? So what's your perspective, right? Is remote does equal to async, or can you be sync and be remote still,
You can be synced and be remote still, for sure.
right? Okay, sure. And the last one is about the employee engagement, right? Employee engagement, and we spoke. You spoke about team bonding and all, right? So uh, uh, employees are not engaged when they are remote, right? They feel disconnected from the organization. They feel disconnected from the larger vision mission of the company. Uh, so so uh, and again, I mean, what is your take on it?
I would say not entirely. Uh, I would lean at 70%. You can still be engaging your employees from remote work.
Right,
Earlier, we have done multiple sessions called zero hour, you know. So on Fridays, where you just run some engagement activities for an hour with everybody remote.
right,
So I think that does not need physical intervention at all. So on that note, I would definitely lean towards it. But you still need to meet up in person once a while, which is where I give that 20-30%.
right. Yeah, sure. So and then the last question for you before we wrap it up is that. in the last, I mean, you've been a remote at an individual level. You've been a remote worker for more
Yeah.
than a decade, like you said, right? But you've been running this remote startup for the last couple of years, right? So, what have been your biggest learnings in running a remote first startup that was not apparent to you, right? As an individual, as a remote worker, you probably figured out a way to make you show up every day and deliver and all that. But I'm saying that if there's like if you have to distill your learnings from running pod for the last in a remote first way, what would those one or two learnings be that we can all kind of take back home and try to see if it applies to us?
Yeah, I think one of the key aspect is you need not do everything by yourself. You know,
Okay.
I think many founders I have seen, including me, have been in that phase where we overburden what we can deliver to, productively. We believe that we can do everything and anything. It's not needed.
Mm-hmm.
So you can plan your tasks in such a way that you can also delegate those tasks to others who can do equally or even better job at it. That
Right.
is one of the aspect which you can always do remotely.
Right.
So as a remote, I would say individual when I was working without the startup mode, I used to do everything on my own.
Mm-hmm.
So I used to handle everything on my own. So I had to do it. But now, when the startup is there, although I'm remote, I need to start understanding that there are people who are specialists in that, who are doing much better job, can do much better job. My role would be to delegate those things, show
Mm-hmm.
them the goal in which we have to achieve. I think that is one of the key aspect which founders should look at, and not overburdening themselves with.
Right.
The second aspect is very simple project management. You know, just put out a bucket list of what all needs to be done for
Mm-hmm.
yourself. It could be personal, professional, both in one bucket, and then you start segregating it. Spend 10-15 minutes in the morning and end of day just re-looking at that list.
Mm-hmm.
That where you'll start understanding what needs to be priority one, priority two, priority three, and where you stand. I think this basics of project management, if people get it right, I think that should definitely be a good step.
Right. Very valid ones. I think I have some bits of advice from you. I don't do this bucket testing, but I think I'm going to. I used to, right? I used to have a pen and paper, old school, right? Scratch it off.
Yeah.
How do you say, right? That gratification you get when you scratch something off, right? You don't get it
Mhm.
when you tick a checkbox on a task to do this app, right? So I think I'm going to try and start that habit again, which I've lost in
Mhm.
the last few months. So, Vittal, thanks a lot. I think you've brought us to what happens at Pod. You've given us a sneak peek of how your team operates, right? And the balance that you're trying to strike, right? Being a
Mhm.
remote first startup between what individuals want to do and what the company's mission is,
Mhm.
right? And you've also shared your learnings there in that process. So, and again, very excited to have the opportunity to work with your team in solving for different pieces of that, right? And kind of it's a gratifying experience when uh, you, what you set out to create aligns with somebody else's need, right? And that's the best thing that a founder can ask for. So thanks for giving that opportunity there in that process. Uh, and
Yeah.
thank you for your time. Uh, it's usually difficult to catch you on a sync conversation. We are doing it mostly async, right? I message you,
Yeah.
probably see it in the midnight, and you respond to me and all that. So that's what we've been talking. So the first time we're doing a sync conversation, I think, right? So it
Yes.
was a very gratifying experience to do so, and that too on video. Thanks for
Yeah.
Vittal for your the opportunity.
Thanks for having me, Shyam.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great evening, and all the best to Pod
Yeah.
and to Create.
Thanks. You too.
Bye.
Bye bye.